So for all of the people on my side here, Druids is part of the coaches. I call him one of the coaches that I trust, and I've been asked a few times by people if I could recommend a good ADHD coach. So I put together a little list, and if you guys do exclamation coaches on my side, it will give you a list of coaches that I think you should check out. Druids is on that list. So, what initially got you into coaching?
Um, it's kind of a long story. Not really. I don't know. ADHD.
Well,
It's
I mean,
always a
it's
long
not like we
story.
don't have time.
Yeah, no. So what got me into coaching was a kind of a myriad of different kind of like dominoes falling. One is being diagnosed ADHD, and the what actually helped me get diagnosed wasn't TikTok. I got before the ADHD community on TikTok blew up. Is whenever I started my journey. Um,
Yeah.
and I found a Facebook group called We Have ADHD that's
Hmm.
ran by a person named Jen. And she has her own Facebook group called Jen Has ADHD. She's based out of New Zealand. And
I've heard of her. I remember the controversy about that actually. But
um, she's a wonderful person. I'm good friends with her. She's ran into a few controversies in the past. But like
it was a name controversy, is what it was that I recall. But
um mostly like there have been things where people have taken some of the things that she said out of context, like very, very, very blatantly taking it out of and skewing it a certain way. Like she did an interview and they in the actual article like misrepresented her very severely.
mm,
And like she had to fight them to get her name removed and all that stuff. And like
oh
but
wow,
anyways, but she's a great person. Really helped me in my journey because that Facebook group We Have ADHD is a worldwide peer support group. And
yeah.
I learned a lot from there, just reading people's experiences, telling my own experience. I became a moderator for that Facebook group, so I joined a pretty extensive team of people of varying degrees of knowledge and experience. And they're all very intelligent, and we like talked within amongst ourselves and like exploring different concepts and like when RSD started becoming a big thing, like we really examined RSD and like that's probably why you'll find that I am one of the few people that don't really like using the term RSD because of a lot of
I came across actually a couple people that are contesting it.
yeah I
Contesting's a bad word. That are they're challenging it.
yeah I mean I've recently I have seen a few people challenge it
Yeah,
but like I don't want to say like I'm one of the first, but I was probably one of the first people
yeah.
that contested RSD and that I saw for a very long time. But I'm glad it is getting challenged now because definitely
Okay,
does.
so a question came in here. What would you use instead of RSD? And to add on to that, what is it that you are challenging about it? Because
Okay.
I saw a couple of people, but unfortunately, this is one of those creators that they have this like 2 seconds of dead space while they stare at their camera
Oh
for
yeah.
at the beginning of their video, and then
It's
they
like
start talking, but they
yeah
talk slowly, and I can't follow it. So
yeah.
like I didn't even get through like 10 seconds of the video, and I'm just like I can't watch this anymore.
Indie Kitty, that's not a. You're close. You're close. But I'll wrap up with how I got into coaching. But so yeah, through the
Please.
Facebook group, I actually went to school. I went to Northern Kentucky University to become a peer support specialist, which is something that I was really interested in doing through therapy. I actually went. My therapist supported me in educating at IEP groups, which are groups for people in recovery for addiction, um, to educate about ADHD. So I started doing that. Started educating on TikTok. TikTok kind of gained traction. A lot of people really enjoyed the way I broke things down and explained things. So I saw that there wasn't a lot of really good ADHD coaches that were actually ADHD. Um,
Yeah. See, and I've always really enjoyed the way that you break things down. I've always said that, and I'm sure
yeah,
I told you that many times.
yeah,
But yeah, I've always enjoyed the way that you take things on. Right? It's very factual. It's very this is my 2 cents. It's not terribly broad stroke, but it's broad enough that it can cover a good
yeah.
number of people, kind of thing. Yeah, I've always said you've done a fantastic job.
And that's kind of like the pride in uh the content that I make, because like I feel I do have a pretty unique perspective in a lot of things, and I
Hmm.
break it down to where people can understand. That's always been something I've been good at, is like helping people understand things that are
Yeah.
willing to understand. Um,
That's the important part.
yeah. So yeah, after I became a peer support specialist and all of that stuff, I got into coaching. I was like, I'm gonna be a coach, and people are like, okay, and that's kind of how it happened.
All
Um,
right.
but to get into rejection sensitivity dysphoria, I don't believe ADHD people experience a dysphoria. There was a content creator that really explained it probably much better than I can, because um, in that aspect. But how I break it down is there is an actual medical term that has been researched and documented and is attributed to more than just ADHD. It's just called rejection sensitivity. Like that
Yeah.
actually exists as a term right now. And so that documented research valid. Okay, I can get behind that. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria was um, kind of thrown out there by one person, Dr. William Dotson,
Yeah.
from Attitude Magazine. Which, sidebar, I'm not a big fan of Attitude Magazine. Um,
Attitude's hit and miss. Yeah, I'm on the fence there with you because um I d- I don't think it's so much Attitude magazine in and of itself, because each of their articles, like any other magazine, it's up to the journalist, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, they have fucking Dr. Amen on there as one
yep,
of their contributors. What does that tell you, right? But
yeah.
they do have some stuff that's really good. So I I stand with you there.
So, and the only people that actually tried to verify any of the research that he put out were people within Attitude Magazine. There was no external review of it.
Okay.
So that already, to me, challenges the validity of it and the scientific validity of it. And the fact, especially because he started pumping out treatments for RSD and saying that there's medication that you can take for RSD. And
I
like,
have heard that.
and that to me is sketch. Like, that is like, I don't trust it. And so, I mean, this wasn't just me looking into it. This is actually the team of people that I was working with through the Facebook group. We
Hmm.
all really, really started researching it. And if you break down what RSD actually is, to me, from my perspective and my understanding of everything, it's typically three things happening in a very simplified. It's rejection sensitivity, it's our emotional regulation issues, and it's a trauma response.
I can
So
get behind that.
that's that's to me what's really happening, because what and I kind of tested it on myself because I struggled with rejection sensitivity. And to be honest, rejection sensitivity dysphoria is the first thing that I found that was connected to ADHD that led me to my ADHD diagnosis. So
Right.
I'm not saying that it can't be a great term to use as a explanation, like a simplified way of explaining it, but to actually help yourself with what is happening, it is not a great term. It doesn't fully encompass everything that's going on. Because what I started doing was I started addressing the trauma. I started addressing the emotional regulation issues. And then I
It's
started
always the drama.
and then I started addressing the rejection sensitivity. You need to address each one of those things individually to really help yourself when it comes to rejection. At
Yeah.
least from my experience and everything. And like, I haven't done any research on it. This is just my perspective and research, but like, it was effective for me. and maybe it can be effective for other people, because I started questioning, you know, each part and asking myself, like, why are these things happening? What can I do about these things? You know, what is actually, like, what's the root of each experience that is happening that's creating this response that I have? Because some of them were very, very extreme responses, and that were like, I was, exhibiting behaviors that were extremely abnormal for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there's something obviously wrong here. And yeah, like, it was trauma from past that I really started addressing, helping myself regulate my emotions, which, like, that's still very challenging because that's just something that we always are going to deal with. But like, when you learn self-soothing techniques and things like that, you can really, really help soothe yourself before it gets so overwhelming. You start behaving, acting, or thinking a certain way.
Right.
And then, like, understanding what rejection actually is, and why you have that reaction when those situations happen. So, what is rejection to you as an individual is very important, because we're all going to perceive what rejection differently, and
Yes.
how we understand what rejection is important.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think the dysphoria part, I think a lot of people, myself included, actually, kind of glom that onto the, it's the perceived, the one that's not there, the one that you're, my friend didn't text me back, they hate me, blah blah blah. But
to me, that's a
from the perspective that you're laying out, though, that could absolutely be explained away by past trauma,
yeah.
right?
I mean,
You've gone through this before and you're afraid you're going to go through it again.
mm,
Ergo, you perceive the rejection.
yeah. I mean, if you have abandonment issues, like, in any form of fear of abandonment, you're going
And
to,
all the BPD people in the house just stood up.
well, see, I'm also a person that kind of hates borderline personality disorder as a diagnosis, and not to
Mm,
say that the people's experience is invalid. I'm not saying at all.
yeah.
I think it's the modern hysteria. I think it is.
I don't disagree with you. My oldest child is diagnosed with BPD. Um, and there are a lot of the stereotypical, he starts to walk away. There are a lot of the stereotypical responses and whatnot that, yeah, they fall into the category, like the the favorite person thing, the abandonment issues, etc., etc.
I mean, favorite person could
um
be a hyperfixation from ADHD, or it
it
could
very well
be,
could be.
or becoming be a special interest from autism. So, like,
Yep.
that's the thing, is I think BPD as a whole is flawed. And it is, I think, more of a modern hysteria, or just a catch-all diagnosis, because some people are afraid to explore neurodevelopmental disorders like ADHD or autism.
Maybe.
So,
Well, and yeah, BPD being the, one of the, not so much a neurodivergency per se, because it's a trauma response.
well, yeah, and that's the thing, is, like, if you have a severe trauma and you're ADHD or autistic, it can very much look like BPD.
Yeah.
And
That's the beauty about all of these being, one
mhm,
giant fucking Venn diagram of doom. Is there is so much, and I totally hesitate to use the word um overlap, or or
yeah,
I stopped using the one word that I'm trying to remember now, but I got in shit from a few people by saying that there was so much overlap
yeah,
between ADHD and autism. They're like, no, 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 that's not overlap. They are two
yeah,
entirely different. And I got my ass chewed for that, right? So I'm just like, there are parallels. How about we go with that? There's a
yeah.
crossover. There's a good one.
There's
Parallels is kind of
similarities.
what I go. Similarities, yeah.
Yeah, the way I kind of describe it, and it's a little bit long-winded because ADHD. Uh, um, is there are similarities between ADHD and autism, but how it presents is different. The presentation of ADHD is different than the presentation of autism. So, like, the reason why someone might be sensitive to a sound might be different. So,
Mm-hmm.
for an ADHD person, sound sensitivity is a thing, but they may not. But more than often, an ADHD person is not going to have other sensory issues. So if you have food texture issues, if you have clothing texture issues, if you have like some weird random, issue of some form of sensory thing, you're more than likely autistic.
Yeah.
That is not an ADHD thing. And I've seen people being like, "I'm ADHD and I hate all these textures of food." I'm like, "You probably need to look into an autistic diagnosis."
No, you're not.
Yeah, like yeah,
the, it's funny because it's funny to me because as I was, like my story, that many know is, I was diagnosed at 7, 21, and 43 between and I didn't know shit about it until, fucking social media. Here I am learning from social media about what the fuck is going on with me. Whereas I've been on medication pretty much my entire life, no idea what any of it meant. And so as I'm doing my own little self-discovery and learning about all of this shit that has affected me my entire life, right? So I'm making content about this, and the amount of times that I had seen in there, like I remember I did this because you were just talking about the texture sensitivities and whatnot. I remember I did this video asking what is one sensory thing that, just fucking drives you nuts, right? And for me, it was wet socks. I hate that, right? I'm part of the always socks crew because I cannot stand feeling dirt on my feet, right? So, and there are times where I'll even feel it through the socks, so I have to wear shoes, kind of thing. But the amount of people that were adding their comments in there, like tags from clothing, I hate those. Textures of this, that, the other thing, and just like compiling this list, and I'm looking
yeah,
at it and going, yeah, I hate that. Yep, I hate that. Yep, I hate that. Yep, I hate that. Yep, I hate that. And then when I started down the autism path, the amount of times that I had people in there kind of like, I knew it.
right,
Why didn't
yeah,
you fucking say something? Like,
yeah,
no, 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 we don't do that, right? You don't
yeah,
just fucking tell somebody. You let them come to Jesus on their own, So, yeah, that
yeah,
was that was fun for me.
yeah. Oh, can't stand long fingernails. I 100% agree. Like, I physically feel the difference of my fingernails. Like when they get to a certain length, and it's not even very long for me, and it becomes uncomfortable for me. So I
Yep,
feel that. Um,
I do as well. But to counter that, I have a problem cutting them, and I don't know if it's the physical sensation of cutting them, but it's like I could same thing, right? Like I can feel the length of them,
mhm.
right? And it's like it's uncomfortable. And I want to do something about it, but like just the physical feeling of cutting them is just ugh, it's just hard, right? It doesn't help that my wife is jealous of my nails because I have like these thick, luxurious nails. Same with my eyelashes. Apparently women hate me, I guess, but yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you, right? Like I feel that, but I have a problem cutting them. Can you file them instead? I probably could.
The sound of the letter, I hate it. See
The
what I
sound of
did
the
there?
letter S, the sound of a letter.
Yeah, I didn't say it on purpose because I hate it. But I mean, I could have just been like, no. Journeys are very individualized. But honestly, like, I always say that we are a hive mind, um,
Mm-hmm.
because we have so many similarities in our experiences. Um, and that's one great thing that I've seen from TikTok and
Whoop.
peer
Oh, I
support
didn't know.
group.
Okay. Just my screen. Don't worry about it.
All right. um peer support group, like just seeing all the similar experiences and knowing that we're not alone in our journey, and like it's reassuring because only ADHD people truly understand, or only autistic people truly understand our experience, which kind of is a little bit lonely in the real world.
Yeah.
But honestly, like having communities like yours, building, community, just having community is super
Don't sell yours
important.
short.
Oh, I mean, I'm not like it. It's there, like it exists. I love my community.
Yeah.
I do want to grow it because like it's a place for people to feel safe and exist in their as true to themselves as possible, as comfortable
Yeah.
as
Exist in their neurodivergency.
you know
And I think that, like for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure, I probably am. Um, a very big part of once I had this self discovery and realized how many other ADHD creators were out there, for me, it was that revelation that fuck me, I'm not alone.
yeah
So many people can relate to this. And then I don't know if it was, maybe it's an age thing added into there, you know, compounding all of the years that I felt like I was one of the only ones that nobody could relate to me. But then the fact that so many people were in the comments and whatnot going like, "Oh my god, I thought this was just me." I think from there was a big reason that I really, really started pushing and making sure people knew that they were not alone, because it was such a huge factor for me. And just reading the comments of other people,
yeah
I think that hit, that really hit for me, right? So I think that's a big reason why I was so adamant about, creating the the community that I helped create and whatnot, and yours and all of the other creators, right? I've avidly tried to reach out and make connections with the other creators and such, right? And because we're among the ones that people are like, "Oh my god, you're saying shit that represents what I'm thinking, what I'm
yeah
feeling." And to have people know that they're not alone, I think is probably one of the most important things for me personally.
yeah I mean, it's it's been really comforting, like
Hmm. That's a
the
good word.
yeah, it's yeah, before TikTok, I was just some guy. I'm still just some guy, but like now I
Same.
have, but now there's people that value what I say. Like,
Yeah.
as long as TikTok lets my videos get pushed out there, like
Right.
that's the frustration that I'm feeling right now. Like, I am incredibly grateful to my community. I'm incredibly grateful to the people that show up to my streams and that support me and that are there, and like it is something that I truly, truly value. The frustrating part is reaching the people that may not know all the other things that I'm doing that would want to support, and being hindered by an algorithm. I'm not like I posted a video yesterday saying I'm taking a break from TikTok. I'm kind of stepping back from it because it is becoming more of a hindrance than it is a comfort.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean that's disheartening though because like I love interacting with people. I love helping people. I mean that's why I became an ADHD coach.
Yeah.
Um, and to be hindered in that by algorithm is very frustrating. Um,
It I 100% agree with you. It is incredibly frustrating from my perspective because TikTok was the platform that I really will say blew up on, right? And then
yeah,
from there I kind of spread to the other ones and whatnot. I'm doing pretty good on Instagram, Twitter,
yeah,
Twitter's fucking Twitter, whatever.
yeah,
Things like that. Like, I had been a big Facebook junkie for a lot of years, right? And then I walked away from Facebook in September of 2020 because just the way the world, vile, toxic, divisive, right? I could not get away from it. Like I started hiding friends that I've known for years. I started leaving groups and
Yeah.
whatnot because it was fucking everywhere and I could not get away from it. So I ended up making I put up a Facebook page for myself there kind of thing. Um, I I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it, but I mean it's there,
Yeah.
but I put it there because I'd been on Facebook for a lot of years. But I mean it's got I don't know, like if I was to guess 1,200 followers or something on it, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but come on, man, don't let the thought walk away on you again. Oh yeah, just the community. Yeah, fly like a bird. Um, the the frustration
Yeah.
for from feeling suppressed from you've got all these people that they'll put in the comments, oh my god, you're on my For You page again, when you finally have a video that kind of goes big,
Yep.
right? And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with, okay, the pandemic is quote unquote over, asterisk, it's not really, but you know what I mean. um and life returned back to the way it kind of sort of was before, so people aren't at home and they're at their jobs now and blah blah blah, and just not spending as much time on social media as they were during the pandemic when they were bored out of their fucking minds.
Yeah.
So I get that, the drop off, right, the decline and whatnot. But when it suppresses you so hard and hammers you so hard, and I'll use you as an example. You are, by the way, if you are not following Druids on TikTok, correct that mistake because he is this far from 100,000.
Yeah.
And I want to make it a goal that by the end of the month, I want to see this guy over 100,000. That
Uh,
is my birthday gift to you.
y- I recently asked for accommodations at work.
I
Uh,
remember this.
then they are a teacher, and most of
Yes.
them are pretty simple or basic. And after they submitted them, they felt so much imposter syndrome and anxiety over it. It's like they're saying to themselves like they've managed for 6 years with no accommodations at work. Why now? And the anxiety over them not renewing my contract because they won't want to put up with my accommodations. How does one combat that? And is that a typical-ish response? I would say
It's a
that
good question.
very good question. And I believe that kind of response is hold on. My computer was on the cord. Anyways, my chair,
Ah,
not computer. So it was like too distracting. Anyways,
uh-huh.
something like ADHD or that might have.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. This is highly professional response, by the way.
I have a cord under my desk that
Yeah.
my puppy will come under the tape or under the desk and she'll like try and dig it out. So then like my foot will hit it and I start to get snaky about it. So I fucking fight to kick it back under.
Yeah.
Anyway, to the question, as we
Yes.
fucking sidetrack.
Um. Yes, I believe that is a typical response. I think that stems from a myriad of things. That could be rejection sensitivity. That could be trauma. Imposter syndrome, most definitely. With the I managed for 6 years. Why now? Like you have to understand that for 6 years you really weren't managing, not in the way that you thought you were. You might have been able to accomplish tasks, you might have been able to get work done, you might have been able to function, but you were doing so at the cost of yourself. You were
You
doing
were
so
winging it.
you were doing so in a way that was actually hurting you and creating probably a burnout situation. The thing about burnout is it takes 3 to 5 years to fully recover from burnout. It has such a detrimental effect on you that it takes that long to recover. You could even be doing everything right to recover from burnout. Like you remove stress, you take more time, you're compassionate towards yourself, you do all the right things, and you can still feel the effects of burnout for 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
So
Yes, that long. I've seen a few creators put up videos on. It's funny because in the last 6 months, I am finding more and more and more autistic creators that I'm following now, right? Funny how that works. But the amount of them that talk about burnout and how long it has taken them to recover from it. This was a conversation I ended up bringing up with my therapist.
Yep.
Was like, I don't know where it happened. I couldn't point to you what track in my life I was on that contributed to this, but I swear to Christ, I am absolutely feeling the burnout. And she went, yeah, you probably are.
And the thing is
Right.
too, like I'm in year 2 of my recovery from like my most like my the moment that I know was my worst part of burnout. I was probably burnt out for longer, but like the it was January of 21? No, or was it 2020? 2020, like I don't time, whatever. It was January
Time,
of a
yes.
year in the past where I literally just couldn't go back to work. I couldn't do it.
I
Uh,
have a feeling that I recall seeing you make posts about this. If I'm
yeah.
not mistaken, is this not just before you moved?
This was about 8 months before I moved.
Okay,
Cause
again,
it,
time.
yeah. So I quit my job by not going back to it. And I literally just
Been there.
didn't say anything to them. I just never went back. I never responded to another message. Like I couldn't go back. COVID was a big reason too because like I didn't feel safe at the current job. But it
Yeah,
also like because they were mishandling COVID stuff and that added to the fear of going back and the safety of it because at the time I was living with people that were um, vulnerable. Um,
hmm.
and I didn't want to risk their health by going into a place that I didn't really enjoy working at, anyways. So yeah, I couldn't go back. I was really burnt out, and for like 8 months, I did pretty much nothing, like because I was burnt out. I was trying to
Yeah.
recover, and I moved and all that stuff. And then when I finally got settled in, I still was. It was still very very difficult for me to do things.
Hmm.
I'm still not in a great financial position just because I've been in recovery from burnout and I haven't been pushing myself as hard as I need to.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm getting there. Um, I'm feeling a lot better than I used to. So to go back to the question, yeah, that is a typical response because we have this fear of our needs being met being
Hmm.
a inconvenience. So that is probably along the lines of a trauma response, people pleasing, especially,
Hmm.
because we tend to sacrifice our needs um, to accommodate other people. Um, that's
Dude, when I agreed to this, I did not realize that this was going to be a fucking one-on-one. Not in this way, okay?
what helped
I'm
me.
I'm not paying you.
I'll send you the bill. Uh,
Fuck.
but no, what
Fuck you, Chris.
what really helped me um start working on my people pleasing habits. Well, and this is kind of a harsh way of seeing it. And it's not 100% true, but it's true enough that it helped. People pleasing is manipulation.
On the side of the person who is doing the people pleasing?
Yeah, the people pleaser is the one
Okay.
manipulating. So
Okay.
if you have people pleasing tendencies, it's potentially manipulation. I should say that, but I use the absolute to help myself. Be, and the reason why I say this is because um, you are presenting a false version of yourself to appease the people around you. And then they now do not know who you are as a person.
I feel like you could broader stroke that into masking it in and of itself.
Masking is survival. So
Right.
in a way, it like it's still similar. It's but people pleasing is you are actively doing things for people and you are agreeing to things. You are sacrificing yourself. You are it's an action. Masking
Hmm.
is a protection from in the way I
Yeah.
see it because you're
It's a yeah.
protecting
It is a survival. It's a
yeah
survival tactic, is what it is.
you're protecting
Thanks,
yourself
Angie.
in order to function. People pleasing is an action that you are doing that you actually do have more control over than masking because masking is a necessity for
Yeah.
in certain situations while I'm a
I'm
very
Pondy. I will challenge that. People with borderline are like chameleons. Anybody who masks could potentially be deemed a chameleon.
yeah
Okay, because I have been doing it so long and so inadvertently. I only recently discovered how long and how much I've been doing it in order to fit into work environments, groups of friends, for my family, things like that, right? I became the veritable chameleon.
yeah
So I'll challenge that. I think I don't think that's just a borderline thing. I
it,
think that is absolutely a masking tactic.
yeah and honestly like that's probably another reason why I'm not fully on board with BPD. And again, experience of BPD people extremely valid, but I think there's
Hmm.
more going on than just what BPD is.
There
But
likely is. Our level
yeah,
of understanding is still only growing, and
yeah,
thank the maker that it's grown as much in the last 2 years as it has. But we
yeah.
still have a long way to go.
But so yeah, Chris, you have a very hard time saying no to people. View that as you're manipulating them because you're manipulating them to think that you're going to say yes. You're manipulating to think that your needs don't matter. You're manipulating to think that you are always going to have the energy and capacity to show up. And again, this I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm just this is how I helped my brain understand it and to start understanding the importance of your own needs and your own energy because you do not want to give a false presentation of yourself and your capacity because people are going to genuinely respect that more than if you were to overexert yourself and then for whatever reason not show up. Because if you continue, it's like kind of like the boy who cried wolf in that perspective. Like if you continuously say yes and you continuously show up and you continuously do this and you're overexerting yourself and you're burning yourself out, but you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, and then you crash, you're not going to be able to show up anymore, and people are not going to be able to understand that because they don't see all of the work that you have um, done and all the sacrifices that you have made. If you're upfront and honest with your energy and your needs, those that are actually there to support you and understand you and be caring are going to understand. The only people that get upset are the ones that are benefiting from your lack of boundaries.
I like that analysis. That's a lot to think about, actually.
So when
That
and
really is.
so setting a boundary is a lot simpler than um, people make it out to be. I mean, it is hard. I'm not saying it's not
Hmm.
hard, but like simple in no knowledge, not application, because trauma and other mental hurdles make it difficult. But um, the simplicity is it's a great tool to show you who's actually there to be your friend and be in your life and and to show who's there to take advantage of
We just got called out because we're both chair stimming.
you. Yes. Yes, we are. I'm just like
God, This is my standard,
Yeah.
right? That's funny. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, watching y'all share Steam is giving me doper memes.
You should ask. Yeah.
I had Vespa send me a question for you as well. Um, my question is, as somebody with ADHD, I've been trying to lose weight. I start off good, but like a week or two will go by, and then somehow we'll get off track, and then I fix it. That only lasts 5 days. Then I get depressed, the imposter syndrome sets in, and then I feel like a failure. How do I trick my brain to helping me lose weight, uh, using what the nutritionalist gave me, and not fail in eating just junk and drinking mostly soda? So I feel like that question can be applied to a greater category of things,
Yeah.
but in this one in particular,
S-
how do you get asked questions like that very
Um,
often as a coach?
sometimes, yes. And
Yeah.
that's actually something that I struggled with. I actually used to be 270 pounds. Uh,
Wow, really?
yeah, I'm down and
I'm I'm the heaviest now that I've ever been, and
yeah,
that's because of my fucking knees, because I can't work out or exercise very well or anything, and it kills me.
yeah.
But anyway, back to you.
So the first thing that I'm going to approach any sort of change to your body, or change to routine, or anything of that nature, is I'm going to approach the internal struggles first. Because why is it that you are wanting to lose weight? Why is it are you wanting to work out? Why what is the objective? Why are you doing it? What is the why behind it? Because if it's coming from a place of shame, if it's coming from a place of negativity, it's going to be a lot harder to stick because that is a negative reinforcer and not a great motivator.
Mm,
And so
my
when
knees and joints hurt.
I mean that is a legitimate thing though, like your knees and joints
Yeah.
hurt. Okay, so how I'd approach is like, what can you do? What can you do to help yourself in that? What are like where are you able to actually get some movement into your day to day? Where are you able to develop a healthier relationship with food? Where like what are the things that you can control in your day to day life within your limitations? Because my knees are bad. Like I've had physical therapy on my knees. The basically they're deteriorating. So like my knees are not great, but I still find movement. I still am, and I slowly build up my knees and the muscles around it and all of that stuff. So when it comes to dieting, and you have a dietitian, and you're supposed to follow this strict rule base, the strict thing, and you're supposed to, do all these things, but then but we're dopamine driven. We're ADHD people, so all the junk food, all of the things that are attractive to our brains are kind of addictions to us.
Yeah.
And if we shame ourselves or guilt ourselves for eating them, that's going to negatively reinforce us and create a depression in us because we feel bad for breaking the diet, or we feel bad for not following the routine. We feel bad for not doing these things because now we associate those foods with a negative. And um, that does not help us. We are not
No.
great when it comes to negative reinforcement. So, developing a healthy relationship with food and understanding that if you eat junk food, it's okay. Like you're not hurting yourself by doing that. And what you're doing is you're working towards a goal. So, take it as quickly or slowly as you need to. If you still need to incorporate junk food into your diet because that is something that gives you dopamine, then how can you adjust your diet to eat a little bit better, but still have that in your diet to where you're not ashamed of having it? And then work it out. Work it out slowly. Progress. Don't just completely change it, because in any health advancement or change, we are dealing with a lot more than just the action of changing our diet. You know, we're dealing with the mental effects of it. We're dealing with the physical effects of it. So like, when I talk to people about wanting to exercise and diet, I tell them to pick one first. Don't do both at the same time. Start working out first. Don't change your diet. Start working out first. Get into the routine of moving. Get in the routine of your body adjusting and being under pressure and strain and in pain of working out, and develop the mental fortitude of working out, because it is a mental thing. Because when you're tired and you're exhausted and you're hurting, it's hard to continue doing. And if you throw changing your diet on top of that, you're adding a lot more mental strength.
Your autism diagnosis. How did that begin, and how did that all come about?
Um, yeah, that one's a little different. Water break.
Love love the shirt.
Yes, Stranger
Stranger Things. Yes, we are.
Things. The show is fantastic. Um, so when it came to my autism diagnosis, is I was a part of a community, um, on a different TikTok account. Like I had a prior to this one, I was doing more cosplay and D&D content and things like that, and I was a part of a community. And I started noticing whenever I was in video chats with like 20 people, right? Like, so it would be a lot of people within that community. Um, I started noticing social struggles on my end, and like that thing, like even though I had a really good understanding of ADHD, there was just missing pieces. You know, like this is not like what I'm experiencing, especially in the social side of things, was not related to ADHD. And I'm like, okay, maybe it is autism. And I really, really started looking into it and talking about it, at least amongst people I thought were friends. And something happened in that group, at least a smaller group of that larger community, that kind of confirmed everything, what I was experiencing. Um, because out of nowhere, they came to me and they're like, "Here's a list of things that we have issues with, of you."
Oh
And
shit.
like honestly, it was a very like painful experience, because these are people I thought were friends. Um, they didn't try to talk to me first. They didn't.
Right.
They didn't try to uh, give me the opportunity to correct anything. They didn't, like, they just came out of nowhere. They talked amongst themselves, excluding me. Came up with a story and theory about who I was as a person, and just said that was me. Like that was who I was. And when they talked to me, they literally just sat me down. And were like, "Here's all the things that we don't like about you," or like, "Here's all the things that you've done wrong." And anytime I try to explain or try to be like, I have struggles, um, they're like, no, you're just trying to gaslight us, and you probably just don't even need to talk. Um, we are like there's nothing that you can say.
Wow.
And it was very painful, because like they literally like stripped my voice out, like they took my power essentially, and that was very like not a great experience. There were some things that were valid though, and then they weren't 100% wrong, but the things that were valid didn't have anything to do with those specific people, and
Mm.
had to do with somebody else that I had talked to already and had squashed things and
Right.
you know, like you know, worked it out. But they were in some respect white knighting for that person um after the fact. And like, cool, be mad at me about that, valid. I basically overcommitted myself to a bunch of different things and I didn't pull through in a lot of areas because I was not in the place to be able to do it, but I thought I was, like
Mm.
the ADHD overcommitting. No one's ever done that, right?
Overextending yourself. Yeah. No, I have
Yeah.
no idea what you're talking about. Hey, speaking of podcasts. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, never mind.
And it's like it's one of those situations where there were some valid points and there were some very not valid points that were just like them echo chambering um and it sucked because it it damaged my relationship within that community because I didn't feel safe going back to it. Um, and just it really put a bad taste in my mouth of certain people too, especially because some of these were big creators, like well-known creators that I still see. Like people will send me a video of theirs, or like stitch a video of theirs, and I'm like, um, and this person straight up told me that they have been diagnosed ADHD as a kid and they don't experience the things that I say I experience.
Oh, one of those.
And
Your
then
experience is not the same as mine, so
yeah,
you're faking it. Yeah.
and then straight up told me that I was using autism as an excuse for behavior because I um haven't done enough research into autism and that I'm not autistic, that I was just using it as a excuse. So
On the
like
next episode of Gatekeeping.
yeah, and the funny thing is like these were people that I was educating about ADHD to. Like I was helping them understand ADHD and
There's
like
only a mild irony attached there.
yeah, and a month later after that I got diagnosed autistic. you know, um
Oh,
because I was talking to them about like, hey, I might be autistic, I'm struggling with things, and then but they took that as me I guess using it as an excuse because like there were some social
right.
things that I was struggling with. Either saying something that was not appropriate to them and I'm not understanding that because I'm used to a very different relationship dynamic with friends, especially like making fun of each other out of
Right.
compassion, like
Yeah.
and just like my way of showing love to some people is to break them down because then I want to
Yeah.
build them right back up because I'm a good friend,
Right.
and
Right.
or just like be perverted as fuck,
Right.
and so like this group,
So that sounds like a lot of relationships that I have. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So
You
and
show
like
love by fucking tick, 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 tick.
yeah,
Right, Nate?
and so like whenever you're not used like so some people don't appreciate that. I'll like, and that's fine. But like if I don't catch that kind of thing. Like it's navigating all of the different social rules, because I my autistic struggles lean heavily in the social side.
Mhm.
Um, and I still struggle with it today. I kind of try to shy away from larger groups now because
Yeah.
that's where the biggest struggles are. But like,
Agreed.
but that experience, just confirmed that yeah, I was having social issues because it came out of nowhere to me. Because and
Mhm.
like they accused me of a lot of different things when like I was like, no, like that was not my intention behind that, or that was not why I did that. But like they read a subtext into the thing that I was doing or saying that didn't exist, and that's where my biggest issue is. Like I don't really communicate with subtext. I say what I mean. I mean what I say, but when
Yeah.
people read into it and assume what your meaning is, that's where the disconnect happens. And
Mhm.
but yeah, that was a very long story of like autism, and like it's also partly why like I feel it's difficult for me to talk about being autistic. Um, because I've already been accused of using autism as an excuse, especially from people that I thought were friends and also are neurodivergent themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and just like, I don't want to be perceived as someone using this as an excuse. I don't want to be perceived as someone um, faking it, because I'm very autistic. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, okay. I had no idea that there was that much, shall we say, painful memory attached to it. So,
I'm
one,
like,
I'm sorry, I
yeah,
didn't know. Two, I apologize for dragging that out of you.
yeah.
Three, thank you for sharing that.
I,
Um,
I mean, it
yeah,
like in the moment it was very painful. Right now, like I'm good. Like I can talk about it and it's not painful. I can talk about it and it's not um
mm,
it's not like a PTSD flashback or anything.
right,
It's just something that happened, right? I've gotten to that point in my life to where I know where I was wrong and I know where they were wrong.
mm,
And where I was wrong compared to where they were wrong, like I I honestly think that like their actions and behaviors were a lot more harmful than what I did,
yeah,
because like I know where I fucked up and I know where I could have, if they gave me the opportunity to, make up for it and like, change behaviors and like which I've done without them,
right,
they just showed me who they were and they just showed me that they were not people that had my best interests. They showed me that they really weren't my friend. And like in the moment, yeah, it sucks, it hurts. But I'm much better without them. Um, it
I'm glad you can see it that way.
oh yeah, like, and that's kind of like going back into like the whole boundaries thing. You know, when people show you who they are when they when they react to your boundary. If you set a boundary and they react negatively, that's them showing you who they are. That's them showing you that they want to manipulate you, that they want to take advantage of you, that they benefit from your, existence without that boundary.
Yeah,
Um, and that's just kind of people. They show you who they are, and maybe in that current point in their life, they don't have the capacity to fully understand that you are growing and that you are becoming better and you are changing, and they are holding on to the old version of you because they can't
yeah.
see you change. They can't see that you have that capacity because they don't
Or the
have
way
that.
that you're changing isn't benefiting them,
Yeah,
perhaps, right? You are
yeah,
you're changing and growing in your learning of yourself, your
mhm,
exploration of I have this affects me, this is, so you change in
mhm,
that direction, but that no longer benefits them, right? So they want to hold on to the old you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and sometimes it's like it's they hold on to that old version of you because they don't have the capacity within themselves to grow. And so like one thing I look at people is um how people treat you has nothing to do with you. Has everything to do with that person.
Yeah.
You know,
How they react to you is
mhm.
that's on them as well, right? You
Yeah,
don't control someone's reaction, perception of you.
yeah, what
What's that one line? Somebody's opinion of you is none of your business.
yeah, and that to me is a bit incomplete because like I understand that mentality, but like it doesn't help
Mhm.
me. What helps me is like I'm a very over analytical person, so like think about it from your
Never
own
met her.
right. Um, think about it from your own perspective too, of the things that you've done in your life. You know, what behaviors have you changed? What perceptions have you changed? What growth have you done in your life that if you were to look back at your former self and go, that person was kind of a piece of shit? Because I can do
Yep.
that with myself, right? Like,
Oh, I could totally do that with myself. Absolutely do that with myself. My first marriage,
yeah,
I
and
was absolutely a fucking garbage dumpster human being
yeah. So like,
because I did not understand myself or anything, and I was just fucking ADHD dopamine hunting, right? If it
yeah,
was not nailed down, I fucked it. and I couldn't, it's not an excuse by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
but it's an explanation as to why I was doing it. Now, in retrospect, I understand why I kind of was that guy. But
Mhm.
no, I was a fucking garbage human.
Yeah. And so, how did you treat people?
How did I treat people
Mm,
overall?
during that time period? You probably didn't treat people very well.
Um, Probably not.
Yeah.
I'd have to think on that a little bit more. Okay, so during that time period, I would have been 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. I was working in the nightclubs. I was treated kind of like a local celebrity, like a trophy. Um, and yeah, it did end up going to my head. I
Yeah.
ended up thinking that, I was invincible and whatnot. I ended up getting fired from the job twice, actually. Worked there 3 times, or 4 times, got fired twice, quit once.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I probably didn't. I was fucking arrogant. I was cocky as hell. I was an invincible 20-year-old.
And see, that kind of proves my point right there, because you didn't treat people poorly because people like that specific person did anything. You just did. You just acted that way because of the internal stuff that you were going through, because of the behaviors that you weren't willing to address, because
I
of
got
the
stories.
atmosphere.
Shut up, Nate.
You know,
Shut up, Nate. You do not have stories. You zip your fucking lip.
it's one of those
I
things. Is
haven't
like,
known Nate for over 25 years.
I've hurt people in the past that I regret hurting. I've
Yeah.
I've done things that I fully regret doing. You know,
Hmm.
but I didn't do those things because someone was a certain way. I didn't treat people the way I did because of them. I treated them that way because of who I was. So when you understand that, like for me, I can understand when someone treats me poorly, when someone does something to me, it's not because of me. It's because of where they are currently in their own healing, in their own life.
Yeah.
They, in that moment, do not have the capacity to see why they are being hurtful or harmful or to address their behaviors. Now, you can call it out. You can, you know, you can, put a boundary up. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to have it in your life, but it helps with the healing. It helps with the processing of those moments because it still hurts, it still sucks, but you can have a better understanding of why it's happening and a better understanding why you're better off without it.
Yeah.
And like we
Yeah, I
also,
I was absolutely in a terrible spot
yeah,
back
we,
then. For sure I was. I did not understand myself in any way. Like I said, I was re-diagnosed like a year or two later and still, knew nothing. Sounds like this. Here's a pack of pills. Have a happy life,
yeah,
right?
which that is something I want to touch on too because I had an interesting message on Instagram a while back. Uh, but
Sure.
um, but yeah, like behaviors in people have nothing to do with the people around them and everything to do with the people with the person itself.
Mhm.
And the thing is, like, we do have a nature to try to help people, and that's where the people pleasing comes in, and that's where the sacrificing of boundaries comes in, and that's why it becomes easy for us to be susceptible to abuse. That's why it's easy for us to be susceptible to narcissistic partners because
Yeah.
we have the desire to help them. We have and we have that understanding. We can be like, oh well, they're this way because of this. Well, that's when you start doing that, that's when you need to go, "Oh, I don't have any
Yeah.
boundaries."
Well,
I
as ADHD people, we are stereotyped as being overly empathetic, overly
Mhm,
compassionate, right?
mhm.
We read into things a lot more than some people are capable of. I find that I find I'm kind of hit and miss with that, and I feel like
Mhm.
it's one brain versus the other brain in a lot of cases like that. Like I can be empathetic to a point,
Oh, yeah, I'm the same
but
way.
then from there it's like, okay, but I can't understand this situation. right. That's what when I was
Yeah.
taking the tests on Embrace Autism, and they were asking, and fucking some of those are just terribly worded. Some of the worst wording on a test, right? Like, you know, the heart on your sleeve thing. Do you understand what heart on your sleeve means? Well, yes, I've heard that expression before. I understand that one. Well, okay, no, yeah, that one I'm a little shady on, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
like those kind of metaphors and euphemisms and things. Yeah, some of them I get, but I mean, I'm going to be 46 years old this month, so I've heard them for a very long time.
We can learn them.
Context is key.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I necessarily understand. Like, why? Where did that phrase come from, and why would they? You wear your heart on you. That just sounds stupid. Oh no,
Yeah.
it's the what is it? The skin crawling on my what the fuck is it? Do you remember the question? I mean, I think it was on the AQ. It was fuck. Now I can't remember the question. Anybody remember what that question was on the AQ50? It's like something about like in my own skin or crawling in my skin.
Yeah. Crawling in my
Crawling in
skin.
no, that's a Linkin Park joke.
Crawling
Thanks,
in my
Pondy.
skin.
Anyway, but yeah, a lot of these expressions,
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it because I've heard them for so long.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the only reason. Uncomfortable in your own skin, it might be. It very well might be.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I it's like I'm autistic, not stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know.
Oh, what was that line I used a while ago? I'm autistic, not a mind reader.
Yeah.
Or not telepathic or something like that.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, but I can tell if someone's vibe is off from across the room.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
I get a question for you about autistic needs being met, because this is something that I had recently come across on, I think it was from a Australian autistic ADHD, and she's a doctor psychologist, I believe, down there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that she had mentioned about autistic needs being met, and then lo and behold, I see a few more videos talking about the same thing. I don't even know what those are at this point. That is something that I personally am struggling with very hard, is trying to figure out what what the autistic needs are that need to be met.
I th-
How are you in that regard? Like, do you feel like you know what yours are? And maybe how did you come to that conclusion?
I approach it the same way I approach all other needs. Um, I think we struggle with it because we're so used to sacrificing our needs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just figure out like what hinders you. You know, what is a hindrance, and what can you do about that hindrance? Can you do
Right.
anything? Can you do anything about it? Um, okay, then what? So, if you're really sensitive to sound, okay,
No,
then wearing headphones would be a need.
all the time.
You know, so breaking it down that way is the logic way. It makes sense. Like,
Right.
oh, I need to wear headphones because I'm sensitive to sound.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but we don't see that as a need because of our people pleasing, right? Like,
Right.
we don't, because it's simple. When we, and it's like, oh, that's the simple, like, we brush it under the rug. Like, oh, that's nothing. I can
Yeah.
just, I can just suffer. I can just tolerate it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need to
I'll just put up
inconvenience
with it.
anyone. Like, no, inconvenience people. Fuck them. Like, like,
Here's a soundbite right there.
you know, like,
Inconvenience people. Fuck them.
yeah, like,
Somebody clip that.
um, it's one of those things. It's like, it's your need. Get it met.
Yeah.
Like, it is a
Thanks,
some
Jesse.
something is negatively affecting you. take care of it. Take care of you.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, I like this kind of, this mantra. You know, treat yourself like someone you love. Take that to heart. Treat yourself like someone you love. If you saw someone you love experiencing the pain and the trauma and the discomfort that you experience, you would do everything in your power to make sure they're accommodated and taken care of.
I'm waiting for the list of complaints and protests to come out of chat here for this call out. So,
You know,
but you're 100% right, right? Don't
and and the
stop
thing
treating my friend like that.
and the case and here's the thing: if you were to do that, is that an inconvenience to you?
If I was to do
If you were to take
accommodate
care,
for somebody else,
yeah, if you were to
no,
accommodate for somebody else, is that an
no,
inconvenience to you? So why is it an
nope.
inconvenience? Why is it an inconvenience for you? Because we're conditioned to feel that way.
Internalized ableism.
Internalized ableism, trauma, our environments were shitty. Our support,
Yep,
our needs weren't met in the past, and
yep.
our needs were dismissed. Our need, all these things, they compound and they make us believe these lies.
And going back to what you said to Chris, actually,
Yeah,
in that, yeah, you cope for
yeah,
so long, your entire life, right? You didn't really cope. You just kind of fucking muddled through. You were dog paddling at best, keeping
yeah,
your nose above the water. And
yeah,
it's just you've gotten to that point where this is your expectation. This is how you handle things, and it's gotten me through so far.
yeah.
Yeah, that internalized ableism there.
And the thing is, like, when people say I'm not good enough, um, that is conditioned into us. We weren't born telling ourselves we weren't good enough. We were
No,
taught that. We were taught to feel that way and think that way. So
yeah, you may
my
hear it in your own voice, but you're not the
yeah,
one who put that voice in your head.
yeah, and like, you know, like
Why must you attack everyone like this? Have you ever listened to the podcast, Whimsy?
yeah, like,
This is what we do. It's fucking call out central over here.
you know, it's like, figure out whose voice that is that's telling you that you're not worthy. Figure out that voice
Mm.
who's telling you that you're not good enough. Name it. Start naming your voices.
Oh
Have,
yeah,
have conversations with them. Argue with them.
I want to
That
beat this son of a bitch with a bat.
you know um write a letter to that voice of why, of everything you've ever wanted to say to that person. Write a letter to them in all the ways that they let you down. That is like, those two things are very, very deep emotional things, so I would not do that unless you are in a pretty good place.
Unless you're in a good headspace to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that actually. My wife was going to a therapist and actually she recommends that to
Mhm.
other people as well.
Yeah, it's
Is to write that letter and then burn the letter,
yeah,
kind of thing. As long as you've got it out, get it out into the universe, as it were. That's why in the Discord we have the Screaming in the Void channel,
yeah, I mean,
because some people just want to go in there and just fucking all right, let it out,
yeah,
and then after 5 minutes it just deletes anyway, right? So it's out there in the universe. You got it off your chest, and now poof, it's gone.
yeah, and you know what I do when I work with people with ADHD, especially as a coach, I focus heavily at first with the internal world. Like, because typically that is the root of all our problems. It's how we function internally affects how we function externally. So we're like,
Mm,
how do I be more consistent? Okay, what's internally going on that's keeping you from being consistent? How do I eat better? How do I exercise? How do I do this? Like, you're trying to do an action, while you're still wearing the weights. You're trying to move forward while you're still being held back. You got to cut those ties before you can move forward. And that's very therapeutic, but like, a lot of therapists don't address the ADHD needs of the internal world. You can
So I'm
address,
glad my therapist is ADHD herself.
yeah, there's a lot of trauma involved that is specific to ADHD. You know, and it's really important to work through that and to understand that and to approach it in a way that is, helpful for the ADHD brain. Um, so it's definitely it's not a quick journey, and that's the thing. That's another aspect of ADHD that makes self help and getting better hard for us because we are the dopamine driven.
It's
We
not
are
the instant
we
gratification,
don't
right?
like what really helped me was um, understanding the concept of the 1% change. You know, you don't have to make every single change that you want to make immediately that we want to make because we're ADHD and we're like, I want to do it all right now. It's the all or nothing method. And it's really
No
hard,
idea what that's.
it's really hard for us to take take account of all the positive things that we have done, no matter how small they are.
Yeah.
So the 1% change is change one thing, you know, make one little movement forward. Because if you continuously add 1% every day, it's going to compound, it's going to do. But like, because we struggle with, the future sight, seeing things in the end.
Yeah.
And if we don't fully understand what that's going to look like, it's really hard for us to commit.
Yeah.
So that's where,
Small victories are still victories.
yeah,
And I try and preach that as often as I can, right? And people tell me that, I couldn't, get up and shower today. I'm like, but you got up.
yeah,
Well, yeah, small victories are still victories. You still got up,
yeah. And
right?
like, a lot of it is not shaming us for the things that we didn't do.
Yeah.
Because
And
because we get into the mindset that
that's
we have to
huge.
do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. Who's telling you that you have to do it?
That's huge, though. And I think because I think a lot of that ties into the internalized ableism because so
Hmm.
many of us grew up with these expectations that were just too much. We couldn't meet. You know, we took on too many things. We failed at this, yada, yada, yada. And it piles up, piles up, piles up. And then we don't want to do these things or we're hesitant to do the thing because you know, hey, look, we're circling back to rejection sensitivity because trauma, because we went through all of this, couldn't do the things, now we're afraid to do them, we're going to fail, we're useless, yada, yada, yada. I like
And
how that came full circle.
I mean, my dad was a military dad.
Hmm.
Like, like if anybody experiences not meeting expectations, it's someone that has a military parent. Like, because like my dad was very get up and work. My dad was, you know, go out and get a job. My dad was, you're not doing enough. Like if he didn't see it, it's not happening. You know.
Yep.
Um, and that was one of those things is um was very hard for me to overcome because like I would be actively doing things, but because he didn't see it, to him I was doing nothing. So I was always considered lazy. I was always considered not doing enough. Um, and I still carry some of that with me, like, and that actually affected my drive to do things because it was like, well, if no one's seeing this, then it doesn't matter. So it's one of those
Well,
things.
thanks for the personal attack again.
But like,
I see by my timer we're coming up on the self-care break again. How's your water doing?
oh, it's actually pretty good still.
It's actually
But
doing all right.
yeah,
Excellent. My coffee is actually getting empty. And yes, Whimsy, I have been talking to your therapist, just so you know.
yeah, I was like, we're pen pals. And
Yeah, I see that.
am I your long lost brother? Yeah, no, I mean, could be. Right now, my actual brother doesn't talk to me, but that's a whole other story. But I was going back to a comment that Gothic said. It says, "Okay, Brain just said passive aggression is just manipulation, and that means you're us a piece of shit." No, that's not what I mean by that. Like passive aggression, or people pleasing. When I say it's manipulation, it's not because I'm not saying that you are a bad, terrible person. It's just a behavior set that we were conditioned into, um, that could be perceived as that. In a way, is that it's still in some aspects like people pleasing is still some aspects a survival thing because depending on your environment, you had to appease the people in your environment so nothing bad would happen. You know, so that is something to be aware of too. Like you're not a bad person for this, but these are behaviors that do need addressing. And of the mindset that I don't believe in good and bad. I don't believe anyone is a good
I'm going to let
person
you carry this
or a
on
bad
while
person.
I run the ad and manager on this side. Uh, get up and go to the bathroom and whatnot, folks, if you need to, etc., etc. I'm going to go refill my coffee,
Yeah.
but please continue your thought.
I mean, I can pause here for a second. I'll end on at the moment. We'll continue the I don't believe in anyone is inherently good or bad, and then we'll
Fair enough. Let's get ourselves some goodies. Yeah, like black and white thinking, no gray. We'll
yeah.
be right back. Alrighty then.
Hello, hello.
Got myself a new coffee. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Excellent choice. Do sensory issues present differently between ADHD and ASD?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Honestly, ADHD tends to only really be sensitive to light and sound, and that's still kind of iffy on if that's an ADHD thing or not. If you have any
Yeah,
other sensory issue, it's autistic. You're autistic, or potentially autistic.
potentially. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's a lot of conversation about that. How about
yeah,
smells? I mean,
yeah,
okay. Now, bear in mind, anybody can be sensitive to anything, right?
yeah,
Anybody can not like smells or feel overpowering tastes or whatever. Anybody can experience these things. It's the same with a lot of ADHD traits, the stereotypical ones. Anybody can forget their coffee in the microwave, leave their
yeah,
keys on the table, etc., etc. But it's all about intensity, frequency, and duration.
yeah.
If
Like,
this is something that's affecting you over and over every day, then you might want to look into it. But smells,
I think
I've heard that is one that's on the autistic plate, but
basically any sensory thing, is potentially an autistic thing. So like, I cannot touch parchment paper. Really, I hate it. I hate and like I just will not. I will avoid it. Um,
that's interesting.
yeah. So like using parchment paper to bake cookies on. Fuck, no, I won't do it. Like,
No,
yeah. If someone scores ribbon, um, like when you take a piece of ribbon and you take a sharp edge to it and to make it curly,
yep,
that that sound and sensation like will hurt me. You
yeah,
know, there's certain food textures that I don't like. I don't like anything that has the consistency of like beans, like so that very gushy, mushy type food.
right.
Um, so like those are all autistic things.
Sushi for me, raw fish. Can't do raw.
I only eat tempura rolls. Yeah, I can do baked rolls.
Um, when cooking, I hate the texture of raw meat. Just touching it just fucking creeps me out. But also, I hate getting my hands wet at all. Right? Like
Yeah,
I'm the main one who does the dishes around here. But I have a brush, and I can only hold it with one hand, and this hand cannot get wet. Right? Otherwise, it's like I start freaking out. Or, you
Yeah.
know, if water fucking spills over and gets onto my shirt like it did earlier, it's just like, you know,
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
fight that one.
I don't like wearing wet clothes. Yeah. Like the
Nope.
clingy to it. Like, but see, the thing is,
Nope.
like, there's also like there is a difference too of like what is a preference and what is a like autistic trait. You know, those are
Yeah.
different things too, because like there are preferences. Like you can still have preferences even as an autistic person or an ADHD person. Um, it goes back to intensity, frequency, and like impact. You know,
Yeah.
I can wear wet,
Duration.
like I can wear wet clothes. Like that's not going to discomfort me in a way to where I will absolutely avoid it, or it won't trigger me in a negative way. I'll just be like, I hate this, and like and I'll be okay. But like
Right.
parchment paper, like I don't like touching it. That's something I avoid. You know, scoring ribbon, certain foods, like that's the stuff I would be more of a trait than a preference.
Right. That's interesting. I've never heard the parchment paper one before.
Yeah.
Intriguing. Very intriguing. Especially as somebody who uses a lot of parchment paper for cooking. So,
Yeah.
but I get that. I totally get that. Right. Like, I'm sure that there are a lot of
It
things that
does.
we do that seem weird to a lot of people. Right. Like
Yep.
I did the video on how I eat chicken wings. I have to do it with a fork and knife. I refuse to touch it.
I mean, I'm
Right.
a boneless wing person. Anyway. I like my adult chicken nuggets.
My
So.
preference. Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Uh,
feel you there, right? But I mean, same
mm,
with like corn on the cob and shit like that, right? Like I don't like handling. I don't like touching the food, right? Like for years, I was one of those people that I love Cheetos. I have my jalapeno cheddar Cheetos sitting here, but touching them, right? You get the
yeah.
dust on your fingers, and it just starts to drive
Mhm.
me batty. I actually was gonna look into buying a pair of chopsticks that I could use for them, kind of thing. But
I'm okay. I'm okay
yeah,
with silicone. I use
silicone,
silicone. Yeah,
I'm all right.
I use silicone in dice molds. So,
There you go. Corn on the cob, robot road doesn't get stuck in your teeth, taking a few kernels out at a time. I had
I
a
mean,
friend of mine who would not eat popcorn. She said it gets in my mouth. Slimy,
I
sticky, or not nice. No.
sandpaper, dragging sandals, and concrete. Can't use a cheap brand of pencil crayon. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. So those will all be more considered autistic traits than ADHD.
Yeah.
Can't wear a lot of
Fabrics.
clothes. My fabrics pretty much wear exclusively cotton, spandex, or fleece. Yep,
Yeah.
that is definitely more of an autistic trait.
Shameless plug, actually. These shirts here are so goddamn comfy. Like the all over print ones in the
Mm-hmm.
merch shop. These things are so comfortable, right? They're not, I don't know 100% what they're made of, but it's just like the fabric on them is just, it's so nice and they're light. And, I'm going to be buying even more of these for myself just because I don't think if they do have a tag on it, I cut it out, but they're just,
Yeah,
they're so nice.
I
But
will
yeah,
have to
Eddie,
have to design
depending on the
stickers.
texture. I hate the fucking texture of a lot of clothes, right? Especially
Yeah,
like the ones that go from super tight to super baggy.
yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
I can't have any like pants that have like the ankle like the boot cut, I guess, where it's like
Uh-huh.
really really tight around the ankle, and I can't wear like high top shoes.
Yeah.
I don't like my ankle being compressed. Um, like I used to have a pair of high top Converse, and I didn't wear them very often.
hmm
So
I had something like those back in high school, but I think that was the last time that I ended up wearing something like that. Because yeah, now that you mention it, I don't recall in minimum 20 years wearing a high top shoe.
okay, yeah,
Boot cut or loose around the ankles. It's skinny jeans that are tight around the ankle.
okay, yeah,
Okay, in
skinnies,
either
yeah,
case, no.
yeah, like
Right here. There we go. Three-quarter sleeves are the longest I tolerate. I roll up my sleeves. I actually do that too, and I don't even really notice that I do it because I'm sure you guys have seen it. I've got a like a blue long sleeve shirt, and I've got a like a maroon long
Hmm.
sleeve shirt, and when I'm wearing them, I will always roll up the sleeves, and I will never
Yeah.
notice doing it. Right?
I
I try and pay attention to when I do it, but it always happens.
Yeah, I always roll up my
So
sleeves too, but like it's not a discomfort thing. It's just more comfortable with them rolled up. Like I'm
yeah,
okay with long sleeves. Like that doesn't bother me because like I like wearing nice clothing. Um, but like
I like my hoodies.
I like dress shirts and stuff like that. But I prefer it rolled up because it feels better. But it's not
Hmm
because I'm uncomfortable.
hmm
That makes sense. Push
It
up
does
sleeves
make
are
sense. I kind of feel like I'm sort of the same way. And like I don't think it's so much a sensory thing. I just happen to notice they were saying that they
yeah.
roll up their sleeves a lot, and I noticed that I do that too. Where was that comment I wanted to
Yeah.
reply to?
But one thing that I was wanted to talk about,
Uh
and
huh.
because someone asked me on Instagram a while back if I knew anybody that was a coach for anyone specifically for early diagnosed ADHD because they didn't feel um, as connected to people that were late diagnosed. And my response to them was like, I can understand why you may not feel that way, but like in the end, it is still pretty much the same experience. But the difference is those that were early diagnosed knew that something was wrong, but didn't have the support for it, and that's a different thing that you have to process than someone who is late diagnosed who had no idea something was wrong and still didn't get their supports met. So like
Right.
to me, there was a lot of grief involved when it came to looking back of my
hmm
life, of like where my life could have been had my support needs been met, or had I had any knowledge.
That is an
Um,
astoundingly common thing that I hear.
yeah,
Astoundingly.
with late diagnosed, but
Yeah.
like as someone that was earlier diagnosed, that I guess we're just handed pills and not told anything. Like, what kind of experience did you get now having the knowledge that you do? Like, did you go through a grieving process? Did you, you
Yes.
know, you know, yeah, and like,
Yeah. As
like,
somebody who was diagnosed initially at 7, but didn't understand anything until I was 43, yeah, I treated myself like a later life diagnosed because the lack of understanding, the lack of any information or knowledge or any of that, I had nothing to go on. So,
no,
yeah, I totally did treat myself as a later life diagnosed, and I totally went through the grieving period, the anger, the remorse, if I had known that this was a part of it, then I think back to the number of relationships that went sideways. Back to, as I described earlier, back to when I was this arrogant little garbage human being. If I had known this is how my brain worked and this is why I potentially acted this way, or what led me to be this kind of person. If I had any understanding of that, I'm sure I could have changed something right
yeah,
along the way. But again, too, we're also talking about the time period I'm talking about is 1997, 96, 97, in that area, right? So we're just coming out of the period. Like I was one of the Ritalin kids that you hear about,
yeah,
right? Just handed Ritalin and on your way kind of thing. Um, we barely knew anything about it back then,
yeah.
it seems, compared to now.
I
And
mean,
what we did know was questionable.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of still harmful information from that time
Oh
period.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
I have
like
no
do
idea
you,
what you mean as we're calling out people on TikTok.
yeah. Do you feel? I guess I mean you said you treated yourself like a late diagnosed person, but do you feel like there is a disconnect in some areas because like the person expressed that um the person's ignorance of their diagnosis, they went through life without knowing something was wrong.
Hmm.
You know, so they like, so it's like they didn't like, I didn't know something was wrong with me, so I didn't have this like, um trying to put it the right word. So like you knew something was happening and your needs weren't getting met. So there, to me, it feels like there might be a different level of frustration or grief involved in that because you had knowledge and still didn't get the help, whereas I didn't have the knowledge, and so I was oblivious to that,
Hmm.
you know. And so in a way, like I can understand the grief being a little bit different, because for me, I can kind of sort of forgive the people around me because they didn't know either. So it's not their fault. And like, they didn't have the knowledge or awareness or the education to be able to spot it. And, and I probably was like, I was kind of fairly high masking, like looking back, like I kind of fit in and learned to fit in. So like, how were they supposed to know and understand? So like, my
Yeah.
grief wasn't necessarily at anyone. It was just at the existence,
At the situation.
the experience.
Yeah.
Did you feel grief and anger towards anyone, like the people that maybe potentially let you down, or was it very similar?
I personally did, but again, too, it's I didn't realize what was happening when I think it was, yeah, 7. Um, I didn't even know that I was diagnosed until like recently. My sister actually is the one who told me. She's like, "You were on Ritalin as a kid. You didn't know that?" I'm like, "I don't remember." So
Yeah,
I don't I don't have the memory of that, right? Like, so maybe my mother was the only one who did know and didn't tell me, or I don't know who she told.
yeah,
I don't know if it didn't seem like in hindsight that anybody else really knew per se. Because when I was in elementary school, grades 1 to 6, I was in a lot of the advanced programs, a lot of the advanced classes. Um, Same in junior high. And then that kind of petered out in high school. Once I hit about grade 10 and 11, I was like, no, I'm fucking over this. Um, but yeah, I think if anything, there would have been maybe some anger and resentment towards my mother because she didn't, she didn't say anything,
yeah.
or I didn't know about it. I just knew that I was taking pills every day and that's it. Right. Um,
Have
yeah,
you?
like,
I mean, have you come to like terms with that and like accepted it, or like are you still
I have.
processing?
No, I think I came to terms. I came to terms with when my mom died back in 2015. I came to terms with a lot of things. So
Yeah,
I think it was just like the I had a hard time processing it initially. It took a few years to fully go through because as ADHD and grief is a problem in and of itself
yeah,
because we forget about the person and then something triggers a memory and then you remember it and you relive it all over again and et cetera, et cetera.
yeah. I've
But
I've seen that in real time, and it was
yeah.
like from a friend. Uh, we sh- she got hit by a car,
Mm,
and while she was walking her dogs, and whenever her dogs died, as a result, and this impacted her greatly because she was very very much attached to her dogs, and like already dealing with depression and things like that, and like one of her positive things that was helping her uh, gets taken away from her, and like a bunch of other stuff happening along the lines with the accident. But I was hanging out with her, and we were hanging out, talking, having a good time, um, just joking around, and she quite literally started talking about her dog as if it was alive and like gestured over to the couch to point out the dog as if it was going to be there.
Hmm.
And because it was just like in the conversation was and like just talked about the dog like as if it was still alive, and literally just forgot that the dog died. This was like only a few months after the accident.
Yeah.
Um, um, so I had like I watched her go through the grief again, and like I was there, and like I helped her through it and helped her understand what happened because like how could I forget that, you know? And like thankfully I was there to help her explain like because she was just newly exploring ADHD.
Hmm.
Um, and like so I helped her, understand that, but like grief is very unique for someone with ADHD.
Yep. And it's not a fun time. It's not
No.
an experience that I relish, not an experience that I wish on anybody.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's literally that you forget about the person, the animal, the whatever for years or months and months or whatever, and then something triggers a memory and you bring it back up, and then you have to go through it all over again, and it's not fun, and that's why it can take so long. But like I said, in my case, it took a couple of years before I could really start to really process what had happened. And I think along that way, it's kind of like I gave up on the idea that I was going to have a conclusion. I was going to have, closure on some of these things because there was a lot that was still left unsaid and undiscussed and whatever. So, yeah, I think a lot of it I just kind of, put a pin in the chapter and just kind of moved along because what choice did I have? You know, I had nothing.
Yeah.
And then social media comes along and I'm learning all this shit about myself. And it's just like, okay, that figures. Oh, okay. She
Yeah.
didn't tell me about that. All right. Well, that figures. Nothing I can do about it. But
Closure is
closure
hard.
is hard to. Yes, it
Um,
is.
I've had to learn about closure. Uh, mo like when someone passes away, I think that's gonna be different. But when someone like leaves your life, getting closure from that can be difficult too. But
Yeah.
that comes back to the whole how someone treats you is nothing to do with you. So if someone leaves your
I was
life,
just thinking that.
you
And yes, puppy. Yes.
know,
That's why I hit the mute as soon as I heard it start. Bunk.
if someone leaves your life, um, that they have a choice, and that's their choice. It has nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
I've had plenty of people leave my life. I've even got to the point where I told someone that I was tired of losing people because of just like just people leaving, or the experience that I had with that group of people, like of just something happening and just losing uh, a group of people or friends or whatever for things outside my control because people don't want to talk. They don't want to confront things like because they're bad at confrontation. But then I made out to be the bad guy,
Yeah.
and that bothered me for a long time. But and then the person I told that I'm tired of losing people, and they were like compassionate and empathetic and supportive, and and I considered a really close friend. They decided to leave, like um,
Perfect.
and I took it a lot better than previous because I did the work into it, but like it was their choice. Even though they knew that I had this experience, even though I knew that they cared about me, even though like the things that they told me about like how they valued the relationship and the friendship, um, so I understood like I was a person of value in their life, but for whatever reason, they felt that it was best for them that they needed to walk away. And and
Mm-hmm.
and and I cannot be mad at them for doing something that they feel is better for them, even if I know it probably isn't, or it's coming from a place of fear, or coming from a place, even if I'm aware of all the other variables, they're making a decision based off of what they feel is right, you know,
So
and
you want to do what you can to respect that decision.
yeah, in the past I didn't. In the past,
Yeah.
I would fight. I would, because like that was another thing.
Yeah.
Growing up in the '90s, when you, like, with autism, you learn how to socialize through media, and what was the one of the greatest things that media portrayed in the '90s was fight for people, and especially,
Fight for what, yeah, fight for
yeah,
what you love. Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
My
So
social experience came out of nightclubs.
yeah,
So
so
like I was in high school, I was not exactly, the most popular guy or anything like that. But then I got into
okay,
nightclubs, and again, take on the role of a DJ. So you're kind of this celebrity, this trophy, this whatever, right? But here's me learning my social cues in a place where all people do is show up to get smashed, to smash, and to smash.
yep,
And this is where I'm learning my fucking social cues from. Are you
yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah, I was learning it from like '90s media, so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it does not age well. Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
No. Yeah. Yeah, no. It's a
um,
very different time back then.
or Euro Trip, or Road Trip, or
Your
all
Euro
those.
Trip is still a fantastic movie. I don't
Oh
give a
no,
shit what anybody
it's
says.
a
It is still hilarious.
it's a great movie, horribly aged.
Yes. It's a great movie for its
Yeah,
time.
but like, so like, the fight for your love. So like, I really
Yeah.
really struggled with that, because they're like, not everyone believed that, like not everyone um thought that way, and I was always confused and hurt, because like, oh, they're not fighting for this, they're not, so it must not be, they must not care as much,
Yeah.
and that led to a lot of problematic behaviors in myself, and like going
Mhm.
above and beyond and doing like things that I knew, like, looking back, I'm like, I'm embarrassed, like, but like, it is what it is, and so you learn that, like, you know all in all, how people treat you, how they interact, whether or not they decide to stay in your life or not, has nothing to do with you. It's everything to do with them. Because like, especially when you understand like avoidant attachment theory. Like, if you look into attachment theory, that also helps with understanding relationships. On friendships, romantic, whatever. If you understand
Mhm.
attachment theory, you can understand how people, like, people behave the way they do, and you can also understand why you behave the way you do. Anxious attachment is stems from a lot of like trauma and abandonment issues. So if you start addressing those issues, then you can work on your attachment and become more secure. If you
Yeah.
are avoidant attachment, that stems from your needs not being met, and being afraid of commitment, and being afraid, like, avoiding, certain things. And like, so being aware of that, you can work on those things. So like, but that's, so it comes down to also acceptance of people for where they are in their current place in life, you know, because we as ADHD people tend to be so observant that we can see the potential in someone. We can see the good in people. We can see, if they only did this, things would be different.
Yeah. Sometimes to a fault.
Yeah, it's to a fault. And so like, it's really really hard to see the person in front of us. And so when someone says, I don't want a commitment with you, like, our nature is like, oh well, like, you're just afraid to be committed, because we can see that that's what they're doing, is they're avoiding it, and so they're doing certain things to avoid that commitment. No, don't even think that. Be like, okay, just accept it. That's hard, to just accept what someone says, because
Yeah.
like, especially when there's an emotional interaction behind it. There's that emotional connection of like we are emotionally invested in this person, so we want the best out of them. We want them to be happy, and we know they can be that way if they do X, Y, Z. But
Mm,
they have to be willing.
yeah. See,
Uh,
with the whole relationship things too. I have recently realized that I had I had a real issue with understanding how a relationship dynamic had changed. I was thinking back to previous relationships I had, like way back in, that same time period. But I couldn't understand. I was in a relationship with a girl and the dynamic had changed and I couldn't grasp onto it. I remember having such a problem with it and I couldn't understand why, right? Like the dynamic had changed from, just goofing around, whatever, blah, 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 to something of a more serious nature. And when that had changed, it took me forever to finally get into that mode and grasp onto that. And then, we were together for like another year or something, and then the dynamic had changed again. And I had such a hard time grasping onto that, right? Like she had gone back to college. So of course, like her time was, just gone because she was hardcore into, ironically, psychology. Um, but I couldn't grasp onto why our dynamic had changed. And I didn't really think too much about that until, recently. And I was thinking about that, like how thinking about relationships that I've had and where and when they changed and the problems that I had, with relationships with other people and
yeah.
comparing them to like the social deficits that I go through personally. And it was a lot to take in all at once, right? But you're thinking about this, you have relationships with people and the dynamic of them inevitably changes somehow.
Yeah. Well, you also have to think too. You know, routines. People are routines
Oh
too.
God,
So when, like, if you're in a
yeah,
relationship
they
with
are.
someone, if you're in a romantic relationship with someone, and you're used to a specific dynamic, you're used to a specific routine of how they're behaving and how they're acting and how they express their love and all this other stuff. But then something changes in their life, which then changes their dynamic. It's going to affect us because
Yeah,
the routine has changed.
yep. And
You know,
do not fuck with my routine.
yeah. And the thing
Rule number
is,
one.
that's that's the thing that we have to be aware of as autistic people because that's our problem. You know, if because we cannot impose a routine on a person. You know, we cannot make them behave towards us the same way. You know, that is unrealistic because
Yeah,
life happens, right? Like,
yeah,
something is going to happen that they're going to change their behaviors. Um, and so we have to be aware of that. So we have to learn how to self-soothe when things like that, and learn how to communicate. Like, hey, I'm struggling because like I know you're going through a lot, and like the routine has changed or whatever. Like, be open and honest. You know, of those things, and like I can see in my past those things happening where like I'm in a relationship and then something changes in that relationship and that affects me because the routine changed and so I behaved in a certain way that wasn't really healthy. you
yeah.
know
Oh no, I'll agree with that. I will absolutely agree with that.
uh
I that was all part of the piling on thoughts, right? It's like, oh God,
yeah.
okay, so that's where okay, oh God, that's why, oh Jesus, that's why, yeah, putting that all together and realizing, well, okay, this makes sense. It sucked, but I see why it happened.
Yep.
I did not handle that very well, did I? No, no, I did not.
Ooh. Like, just looking back at some things, it's like you kind of wish that you can like like some people be like, hey, like I know you experienced this version of me and I'm just sorry. like I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you
I
yeah.
actually did that to one or two people. Yeah, something like that. I pop onto Facebook every now and again, like, once or
Yeah.
twice a month kind of thing. But it was, yeah, I came across an old friend of mine and I'm like, here's a little update.
Yeah, like
Sorry.
I've considered doing
I
that.
was a douche.
Yeah. I've considered doing that. But like those are always like one hit or miss too because you never know if the person uh really cares.
Hmm. Or
You know,
understands
yeah.
or believes you or even cares, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Even remembers you.
yeah.
I'm sorry, who's this? Never mind, don't worry about me. I'll just sit over here and go fuck myself. It's all good.
Yeah. It's one of those things. You know, that is part of existence. That's part of life. You know,
Yeah.
uh, but I think it's a very unique perspective of the late diagnosed, right? Like there are plenty of people. I'm sure everyone has something like that, but when it comes to being undiagnosed, I think there's a whole other layer behind it because like I didn't know. I didn't know why I did certain things. I just did it.
Yeah. I
And
think a lot of that comes with self-discovery and understanding, though,
yeah,
right? Being going through the whole process of unpacking your entire life and going, okay, this is why I did these things,
yeah,
and understanding how your brain handles, different situations, et cetera, and just accepting that, understanding that this is a part of you, and trying to deal with that the best way that you can, trying to, you know I don't want to say fix yourself, but trying to, to know how to apply techniques and tricks and shit like that, like life hacks and whatnot, to
yeah,
better interact with others, to better handle a situation, right? Like, in my case, going out of the house, if I have to go to the Walmart, I got my loops in my pocket, right? Shameless plug, but yeah, true story. I got two pair of loops on me at all times,
yeah.
right? If I'm not wearing these, just
I use Raycons.
yep.
Uh,
There you go. See, but it's something that you have incorporated to part of your routine, I'm sure, whenever you
yep,
leave the house.
yep.
Yep, same with
And
me.
whenever I forget them, I'm like, fuck.
Uh, yep,
And
exactly.
ponderous nerve, get a new psychiatrist. I know that's like a kind of easier said than done.
I've said that to you before.
Get a new
Your
psychiatrist.
your psych is a fucking joke. Right up there with mine.
Yeah, Uh, that's a
Uh,
whole probably long discussion about the medical health system for
Oy, oy,
ADHD.
oy.
That
Oh yeah.
that is a fucking truckload of can of worms.
Oh yeah. Well, ADHD for my psych, no problem with it, right? When I
Yeah,
went and got reassessed uh, back at the beginning of 2020, I think.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that tracks. January 2020, I went back in, got reassessed. 2020, 2021, it doesn't matter. Time.
hmm
Anyway, I went back, got reassessed. He basically handed me a little checklist, and all it was is the DSM criteria. That's it, right?
yeah,
Just a little checklist. Do you experience this? And I'm just looking at this like, are you? Yes. Like, I know this. I
yeah.
fucking do this, but I, develop my own little fucking my spectrum graph here. Like, trust me, I know this shit. ADHD, no problem. Autism, problem.
I was
Because I
yeah.
didn't present outwardly because I was still heavy masking at the time.
I was very fortunate that my care team listened to me, took and believed me. I think a lot of it was because like my therapist knew how intelligent I was, my psychiatrist knew how intelligent I was, and like they communicated with each other in a very healthy way. And whenever I started talking about autism, like they were like, yeah, like my psychiatrist was like, I was seeing kind of things already, um, and I wanted to bring it up at some point, but like they were very like I was very fortunate to have a very supportive team. When I got my
Yeah.
autism assessment, like the first like I actually had to educate my assessor on the puzzle piece and all that because like they were doing like puzzle piece stuff for and I was like, do you know like why that's not good? And they're like, oh, I
No.
didn't know that. And they're like you
Yeah.
seem to make eye contact pretty well. I was like, my dad was in the military. Eye contact was like something I had.
Mandatory.
Yeah, I had to learn that. So like, I don't like it,
Situational.
but like I can do it. Like,
It's situational for me.
yeah, I mean, if I'm
No,
really
my
if I'm comfortable with someone, I can do it all day. But if it's
yeah.
not,
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure, for sure. Like Shoes was up here this weekend, and he and I have no problem. We can sit here and have a conversation.
like
When I'm at work, my coworkers, I pick a spot, or look through them, or something. I've got my hacks that I've been doing my entire life
I
that I
just
didn't realize I was doing.
I just don't even look at people.
That too.
You know, I
That
mean,
too.
you'll even like it's rare that I even look at a camera, like when I'm doing TikToks or even like this live. Like
Yeah.
it's hard. Like I know looking at the camera, like, but that's still hard for me.
Well, you can see that I'm not.
Yeah, yeah,
I do sometimes, right?
yeah,
It depends. I do sometimes. Um, my therapist is also a diagnostician. She's just not a diagnostician in Alberta here, but she's been incredibly supportive. She's just fantastic. I just love her. So
yeah.
when it comes time to actually do my formal, I think I'm just going to go through her because she's private. I don't give a shit if I have to go to the next province over or whatever. I'm pretty sure she can just fudge the paperwork and say, yes, I did this over here. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because my psych is just a fucking joke. But I mean, she was even one that when I told her, my psychiatrist said that you don't present outwardly. And she went, the fuck you don't. I'm sitting here watching you. She's like, I pegged you within the first 10 minutes you walked in.
Yeah.
Really? She's like, yeah. The way that
Right.
you speak, she's like, you barely look at me, and you've always got one of these in your hand. She's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Trust me, I pegged you.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Uh,
No, Desi, not like that, for fuck's sakes.
I'm very
Leave
much
that to Poet.
I'm very much the social autist. You know, like uh, you don't really start noticing how like my struggle or me being autistic until you really start getting me having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I do tend to grab on topics and run them into the ground.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to interact in groups because I don't know when it's my turn to speak. So I often
Mm-hmm.
interrupt. Or like I don't interact if it's a topic that I have nothing like I don't know how to interact with. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's also why in the past, I used to know a lot more than I do now, which I think is just mostly because like I haven't kept up with the knowledge, so I just forgot it all. But like I
There,
used to
there's that, but
learn,
burnout plays a part in that too, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. Like I used to learn a lot of different things, so I could have a conversation with people no matter what the topic was,
Mm-hmm.
and I was proud of that. But now, like I used to watch NFL a lot, don't anymore. I used to I used to be a lot more multidimensional in different things, and now I'm very like I just kind of stay in my comfort. And it's not that I don't want to know these things. It's like, yeah, burnout. I don't have the energy for it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but
I relate to that.
one thing I do want to say, because Rock Creature said something, and like I'm not trying to call you out, because I understand why you get upset. Like when you say, I notice people try to grab my eye contact, it pisses you off, and you call them out. I don't know, like I understand why it may upset you, I don't know how you call them out, but I want to add, like, I want you to think about that, because if they don't know your needs, they're not doing anything wrong. But if they
It's a good
know
point.
if they know your needs, then I think it's a lot more appropriate to call them out. And this is for everybody. I'm not saying this specifically to you. I'm because this is like this triggered a broader thing.
No,
Because
it definitely does.
for us being autistic and ADHD, we have a lot of needs, and they deserve to be met, and they're valid. But not everyone's gonna know them. So try to be more um, compassionate and curious in your everyday life. So like if someone's trying to grab your eye contact and you're uncomfortable with it, yeah, you can be like, "Hey, I'm just not really comfortable with eye contact."
Mm-hmm.
You can ask them a question like, "Hey, like like do you feel like I'm not paying attention to you and I'm not making eye contact?" And if they say yes, then you can explain to them like, "Hey, I can still pay attention to you without eye contact. It just makes you really uncomfortable." Like
Yeah.
be more compassionate in how things like, and this is again for everyone, um because not everyone's going to know your needs, and the more compassionate and curious you are, the better and easier interactions happen. It's a lot easier to like be angry and lash out, and to like allow that emotion to drive your action.
Yeah. I had to do
uh
that with my father. I had to explain to him, why I've always got one of these.
yeah,
He's like, well, you're always looking at your phone or something. I'm like, okay, well, I'll fucking bring one of these instead next time I show up at your place. And I did, and I was sitting there and just doing my thing, whatever, still engaging in the conversation, right? I, but trying to make him understand that, look, I need something else to have
yeah,
a part of my focus in order to, my energy has to go to this so that I can better pay attention to you, right? Trying to get him to understand that. He didn't, he had a hard time wrapping his head around it, which is ironic because I think I got this from him, but whatever. Um, but yeah, I tried to explain it gently. Um, when he had brought it up, he did so. Normally he's pretty abrasive, but he did so in a reasonable manner, right? So
yeah.
it was met in kind, I guess.
See,
But
this is
yeah,
this is a good
having
place.
to explain that.
I mean, this is kind of a good place to go, kind of back to boundaries, because needs are,
Yeah.
and how to actually set them. Because the way I look at boundaries is it's a bridge to interact with me another way. So the people are saying like, oh, it's frustrating when people are actively trying to get into your line of sight. That might be a need for them, or because they're conditioned socially to view eye contact as the only means of attention, they don't know another method. Now, it's not our responsibility to educate them, but we can approach it with a greater understanding. We can approach it in a means that is helpful and not harmful. So if you
Mm.
notice that, just ask them, like, "Hey, do you feel like I'm not paying attention to you unless I'm making eye contact with you?"
There you go.
Like that's an easy question to ask, and that's respectful because like you notice them trying to fulfill something that they probably need, and you're also trying to fulfill something that you need. So this is where the boundary and communication can come in. So when you have your manager that's yelling at you saying, "Look at me when I'm talking to you," that's when you set a consequence to your boundary. You
You're
go,
like, no.
you just be like, eye contact makes me very uncomfortable. I can still pay attention to you even if I'm not looking at you. And if you demand my eye contact and knowing that it is uncomfortable to me, then I can no longer interact with you. And until you can respect my boundary or my needs, then I'm not going to. I know that's harder for a manager, but you can still say it because
Social trauma and all.
they have to respect that. My ex would pull my arm if I broke eye contact with him when he was talking. Oh yeah, like see that shit right there. Like this is where boundaries do need to have consequences, and you need to be able to follow through on that. You know, so it's like if you say, "Hey, eye contact is really not comfortable for me. I don't like eye contact," and then like keep trying to make eye contact with you, and you just be like, "Hey, that's just uncomfortable," and like you don't do anything about it, they're always going to try to disrespect your boundary. But if you go, "Hey, I told you that's uncomfortable. I don't like doing that. So until you can respect me, I'm just gonna not interact with you anymore."
There you go.
And like, and
Set your
you,
boundaries and stick by them, kids.
yeah, and like that right there too is like you're not blaming them for anything. You're not accusing them of anything. You're just saying, "Hey, this is uncomfortable for me. I can't deal with this. I'm gonna go where someone I can't." Like you're not.
Yeah.
It's not attacking anyone either.
Um,
So
I notice we're getting up close to the 5 o'clock ish. Where are we here?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I wanted to thank everybody for being with us on both sides. Drink your water, take your meds, be kind to yourself, and give somebody a hug. You know they need it.
Yeah.
Love all y'all. I will see you tomorrow afternoon.
I will see you all tomorrow evening.
There you
If you don't
go.
know.
Perfect.
So
Sounds good.
have a good one, everyone, and
All right.
take care.
Take care, my lovelies. We will see you in the Discord. Kaboom.